Tasha Brooks had never been the type to put herself first. As a nurse at St. John's Memorial Hospital, she was used to running on fumes, her days a blur of white coats, sterile rooms, and the incessant beep of monitors. Her patients came first, always. Their needs, their pain, their recovery, they were the focus of her world. But somewhere, deep inside, she couldn't help but wonder what it would feel like to be the one in need of care for once. It was nearly 2 a.m. when Tasha finally clocked out. Her feet ached in her worn sneakers, her eyes were gritty with exhaustion, and her shoulders felt like they'd been weighed down by the world. Another 12-hour shift had come to a close, but it had ended with no rest in sight. Instead of heading home to her modest one-bedroom apartment, Tasha was racing against the clock, barely able to focus, as she rushed to catch a flight. She had been dreaming of a vacation for months, just a few days to escape, recharge, and see the world outside the hospital walls. The hospital was always there, always demanding, always pulling at her. She'd saved up just enough to afford a few days in the Caribbean, a small escape to an all-inclusive resort. Tasha had never been anywhere glamorous. She'd never had the chance to experience the world like that. This was supposed to be her time. Yet, as she skidded through the crowded terminal, her body already weary from hours of caregiving, her mind was muddled. She had checked her flight details a dozen times, but the stress of the day had left her fuzzy and disoriented. The flight was in 20 minutes, but her gate wasn't where it was supposed to be. "Excuse me," she called out to a passing attendant, breathless. "Where's gate F14? The attendant pointed down the hall, and Tasha nodded her thanks, speeding down the terminal. By the time she reached the gate, the last group of passengers was boarding, and the flight was moments from departure. She hurried up to the podium, her heart pounding, and handed the gate agent her boarding pass. "Are you traveling alone, ma'am?" the agent asked with a smile. "Yeah," Tasha muttered, trying to steady her breath. She just wanted to get on the plane and sleep. The gate agent glanced at her ticket, then motioned toward the aircraft with a polite gesture. "Please head down the jet bridge, ma'am. You're in first class." First class. Tasha blinked at the words, confused. She had no memory of being upgraded. But her exhaustion dulled the question before it could form into concern. She was too tired to care, too eager to get on the plane and close her eyes. The jet bridge felt longer than usual, and as Tasha finally stepped into the cabin, her body still heavy with the weight of the day, she was greeted by a flight attendant who guided her to her seat. "Welcome aboard," the attendant said with a smile that seemed to carry a hint of recognition, though Tasha was too tired to pay much attention. She collapsed into her plush seat, the softness of the leather enveloping her, and the low hum of the jet engine soothed her like a lullaby. Her eyes fluttered shut almost immediately, and for a moment, the world faded away. It wasn't until the jet started to move, the acceleration pressing her into her seat, that Tasha stirred. Her eyes opened sluggishly, her head spinning from the motion. It took her a moment to register that the plane was moving faster than she was accustomed to, faster than a commercial flight. Then the announcement came over the intercom, the soothing voice of the captain filling the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We're currently cruising at 35,000 feet, heading for our destination in the Caribbean. The flight time will be approximately 3 hours, so please sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride." Tasha froze. Caribbean. She blinked, confused. She wasn't flying to the Caribbean. She was supposed to be heading to Miami, just a short hop from home. Her vacation was supposed to be low-key, nothing extravagant. She glanced around the cabin, her eyes widening as she took in the polished wood accents, the sleek leather seats, and the small bar at the front. This wasn't a regular commercial flight. This was a private jet. Tasha's heart skipped a beat. Her stomach sank as she realized what had happened. The exhaustion, the mix-up at the gate, the lack of attention to detail, it all flooded her mind in a rush. She had boarded the wrong plane. This wasn't her flight. She was on a private jet. Her eyes darted toward the front of the cabin, where a man in a tailored suit was sitting, his back to her. His dark hair was neatly styled, his profile sharp and chiseled. He seemed to be lost in thought, his gaze distant, as though the world outside the windows was nothing more than a blur to him. Her mind scrambled to make sense of it all. The luxurious interior, the flight crew, the mysterious man, everything about this screamed wealth. Wealth and exclusivity. Tasha's heart raced. How had she managed to end up on a private jet? How was she going to explain this? The flight attendant came by, her heels clicking on the floor. "Would you like a drink, miss?" she asked politely, as though this was all perfectly normal. "No, no, I'm fine," Tasha stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. She felt the sweat bead on her forehead. This was crazy. Out of control. As the plane climbed higher into the sky, the wind howling faintly outside, Tasha found herself gripped by a growing sense of panic. She should have gotten off. She should have said something when they called her to board, but in her exhaustion and her focus on getting away, she had let it all slip. This wasn't her life. She wasn't the type of person who took private jets. She didn't belong here. Yet, there was something oddly exhilarating about it. A thrill, a rush, like she was on the verge of something big and unknown. It was the kind of adventure she had always dreamed about, but now that it was happening, she wasn't sure if she was ready for it. The plane leveled off, and for a moment, there was nothing but the hum of the engines and the occasional murmur from the flight attendants as they moved around the cabin. Tasha sank back into her seat, her fingers gripping the armrest tightly. Her mind was racing, but her body was too tired to keep up. She was trapped in a situation she had never expected, with no idea how it was going to end. At the front of the cabin, the man Grant Davidson, the billionaire tech mogul, was lost in his own thoughts. He hadn't noticed the woman who had accidentally boarded his plane, nor did he care. He was a man of business, not idle curiosity. But little did he know, the unintentional passenger seated behind him was about to disrupt his carefully controlled life in ways he couldn't yet fathom. Tasha's life was about to change in a way she never imagined. Tasha sat back in the plush leather seat of the private jet, the low hum of the engine vibrating beneath her. She had tried repeatedly to get off the plane, but the crew insisted it wasn't safe. "It will be resolved as soon as we land," the flight attendant had assured her, her voice a calm, practiced professionalism that did nothing to quell Tasha's growing anxiety. The jet was enormous, a smooth stretch of luxury and opulence she couldn't quite make sense of. Velvet-lined chairs, polished wood accents, sleek chrome tables, and walls that seemed to glow with warmth, all of it so far removed from her usual world of cramped taxis, waiting rooms, and budget hotels. She felt like an intruder in someone else's dream, and she couldn't figure out how to act in this extravagant bubble that enclosed her. Tasha shifted uncomfortably in her seat, glancing around the cabin. The crew, professional but distant, moved quietly between the galley and the cockpit, never acknowledging her except when necessary. They didn't even offer small talk, which left her feeling awkward and even more out of place. She glanced down at her plain blue jeans and simple white top. Her sneakers had scuff marks from the long hours spent in airports, while everyone else on this plane probably wore designer suits and had impeccable hair. She let out a quiet sigh and tried to make conversation with one of the attendants. "So, how long until we land?" The attendant, a woman with perfectly styled hair and an air of disinterest, smiled politely. "About 2 hours, miss. Please don't hesitate to ask if you need anything." 2 hours. Tasha spent the time staring out the window at the endless stretch of clouds below, unsure of what to do with herself. Part of her felt like she should be taking this as an opportunity to relax, but she couldn't shake the feeling of being trapped. There was nothing about this life, this jet, these people that felt like it belonged to her. She wasn't rich. She wasn't even close. She'd grown up with humble beginnings, worked every odd job she could find, and built her life step by step with determination. And now, she was trapped on a private jet with people who were probably used to the comforts of this world. Her stomach churned with the discomfort of not knowing how to behave, what to say, or where her place was in all of this. The hum of the jet shifted as they began their descent. Tasha could feel the change in the air pressure as the flight attendants went through their routine checks, securing everything for landing. It wasn't until the jet touched down on the tarmac that she noticed the subtle shift in the atmosphere. The door to the jet opened, and a tall, well-dressed man stepped inside. His face was sharp, handsome, and perfectly composed, but there was an underlying weariness to his eyes. He had the look of someone who had seen and done it all, someone who was used to getting what he wanted. Tasha felt a flutter of unease. This must be him, the man whose jet she had somehow ended up on. The billionaire. He walked through the cabin like he owned it, which, of course, he did. The air around him was thick with the kind of charisma that only people with money and power exude. He caught sight of Tasha, and for a moment, their gazes met. There was a slight hesitation in his step, as if he'd just realized she wasn't part of his inner circle, wasn't someone he recognized. She could practically feel the shift in his expression, from professional curiosity to mild annoyance. "Excuse me," he said, his voice low, with a smooth edge that implied authority. "You're not supposed to be on this flight." Tasha's heart skipped. She hadn't expected to be confronted so directly. She cleared her throat, trying to keep her composure. "There's been some kind of mix-up," she explained, trying not to sound as flustered as she felt. "I wasn't supposed to be on your plane. I was just, well, I'm just here." Grant Davidson raised an eyebrow, his gaze scanning her up and down. She couldn't help but notice the way his eyes lingered, his focus sharp but almost clinical. She felt exposed, as though he were trying to determine whether she belonged here or not. The silence stretched between them for a moment, thick with unspoken questions. Tasha fidgeted nervously, feeling the weight of his gaze. "Well," Grant said finally, breaking the silence, "I'm not sure how you ended up on my plane, but we'll sort it out. Don't worry. It's probably just a mix-up with the booking." Tasha felt herself flush, unsure whether he was trying to comfort her or just placate her. She tried not to let her discomfort show, though the sting of being an uninvited guest still lingered. Grant motioned toward the back of the plane. "Make yourself comfortable. We're landing soon." As the plane touched down, Tasha felt the jolt of reality hit her again. The world outside was nothing like the small, somewhat modest life she'd known. This was another world, one where she was an outsider. And yet, there was something about Grant that intrigued her, even if she couldn't explain why. His aloofness, his polished exterior, his effortless confidence, they all screamed privilege. but there was also something restless about him, an undercurrent of dissatisfaction that she couldn't quite place. The plane rolled to a stop, and Grant stood up, adjusting his perfectly tailored suit. "Come on," he said, his voice a little more relaxed now. "Let's get you sorted. We'll figure out what happened with the booking, and then you can figure out how you're getting back to wherever you're headed." Tasha didn't know whether to feel relieved or even more out of place. He was offering help, but the way he said it made her feel like she was a charity case, an inconvenience to his plans. She followed him off the plane and into the Caribbean sun, where the contrast between the sleek luxury of the jet and the raw beauty of the island was startling. Tasha squinted against the bright light as she stepped onto the tarmac, the heat of the sun already heavy on her skin. The private island they'd landed on was pristine, every inch designed to offer the kind of luxury that she couldn't even begin to comprehend. "Welcome to paradise," Grant said dryly, as if the words were as automatic as the polite smile he gave her. "I'm sure we can figure out how to get you home tomorrow." Tasha could barely process what was happening. She was in the middle of a billionaire's world, and she had no idea what her next move was. She looked around, her anxiety bubbling beneath the surface. The staff, the luxury cars, the tropical landscape, all of it felt like something out of a movie. She had never imagined she'd find herself here. But something inside her, something small but persistent, was starting to thaw. She was out of her depth, but she wasn't going to let this strange detour swallow her whole. And maybe, just maybe, this would give her the chance to see what life looked like from a different perspective. Grant motioned toward a sleek, modern villa just ahead. "You're welcome to stay for the night. We'll sort out the mix-up tomorrow." Tasha hesitated. It felt strange to accept the offer, but something about the way he'd said it almost casually made her feel like this was the easiest option. "Okay," she said softly, still trying to process everything. "Thanks." As they walked toward the villa, Tasha couldn't shake the feeling that the tension between them was just beginning to simmer, that this unexpected encounter, this bizarre twist of fate, was leading them both somewhere neither of them could anticipate. Settling into the Caribbean, Tasha stepped out of the private jet and onto the hot tarmac, the scent of salt water and tropical flowers filling the air. The island breeze kissed her skin as the warmth of the Caribbean sun wrapped around her like a blanket. She squinted against the bright sunlight, still trying to process the surreal experience of the last few hours. Just a few days ago, she was working 12-hour shifts in a busy hospital, barely able to catch her breath. Now, she was standing in front of a sprawling, luxurious villa on a private island. It felt like a dream. A dream she didn't belong in. The villa was a sprawling structure of modern design, with whitewashed walls, floor-to-ceiling windows, and infinity pools that seemed to spill right into the ocean. Everything gleamed with wealth: the polished marble floors, the delicate outdoor furniture, the perfectly manicured gardens. It was all so perfect. Tasha felt out of place. She was used to small apartments and crumbling neighborhoods, to fast food on her lunch break and the constant pressure to make ends meet. But here, in this paradise, it felt like she had stumbled into another world entirely. The staff greeted her warmly, their voices melodic with island accents, but it only made her feel more self-conscious. She was the outsider here, someone who didn't belong, yet somehow seemed to fit in. "Welcome, Miss Tasha," one of the housekeepers said, her smile wide and kind. "We are at your service. Please, if you need anything, don't hesitate to ask." Tasha nodded awkwardly, unsure of how to respond. She was grateful for their kindness, but it only made her feel more alien. She watched them move with ease, seemingly at home in this extravagant setting, while she was trying her hardest not to trip on the perfectly smooth floors. As she wandered around the villa, she couldn't help but be in awe. The open spaces, the view of the turquoise ocean stretching as far as the eye could see, it was breathtaking. But it also felt overwhelming. She'd worked so hard her entire life to get by, always sacrificing her own happiness to care for others. Now, she was here, surrounded by unimaginable luxury, and she had no idea what to do with herself. Grant's unexpected generosity. It wasn't long before Grant made an appearance. He found her standing by the edge of the villa, staring out at the ocean, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as if she were trying to keep her feet firmly on the ground. "You look like you're about to fall off the edge of the world," Grant said, his voice carrying over the sound of the crashing waves. Tasha turned to find him standing there, wearing dark sunglasses and a casual linen shirt. There was a coldness in his eyes that made it hard to read him, but there was something else there too, a subtle vulnerability she hadn't noticed before. "I'm just trying to take it all in," she replied with a small, uneasy laugh. "It's a little much, you know." Grant's expression softened slightly. He took off his sunglasses and tucked them into the pocket of his shirt. "I get it," he said quietly. "It's a lot to adjust to. But the island has a way of growing on you. It's different here. Slower. More real." Tasha raised an eyebrow. "Real? This?" She gestured toward the villa behind them. "It doesn't exactly scream real." Grant chuckled, his lips curling into a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I mean the people, Tasha. The culture. The way of life here. People aren't just chasing status or money, they're focused on what really matters. It's easy to forget that when you're surrounded by all this." Tasha studied him, trying to understand. "But you're surrounded by all this," she said, gesturing to the villa, the boats parked on the dock, and the luxury that practically oozed from every corner of the property. Grant seemed to hesitate before he replied. "I didn't choose it, Tasha. It's all just been handed to me." The words were blunt, but they were sincere. Tasha felt a twinge of something, a flicker of empathy for him, something she hadn't expected. Grant cleared his throat and changed the subject. "Come on. I'm taking you out on the boat. The sunset looks incredible from the water. You could use a little distraction." Tasha hesitated, unsure. But something in his tone made her nod. "Okay, I'll go." The boat ride, an unexpected conversation. They took the boat out on the calm waters as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting a soft golden glow over the ocean. Tasha sat at the edge of the boat, her feet dangling over the side, while Grant steered the boat with a practiced hand. The water was smooth, almost glass-like, and the sky above them was painted with shades of pink and purple. For a while, neither of them spoke, the only sound the hum of the engine and the gentle slapping of waves against the boat. Tasha felt herself relax, the weight of her initial discomfort beginning to lift as the scenery worked its magic on her. Finally, Grant broke the silence. "I don't know if anyone's ever told you this, Tasha, but I don't trust people easily." Tasha glanced at him, surprised by the sudden vulnerability in his voice. She had assumed he was just another rich guy, immune to the kind of struggles she faced. But there was something raw about the way he said it, something that made her reconsider her first impressions of him. "Why's that?" she asked, her voice softer than she intended. Grant didn't look at her, his gaze focused on the horizon. "I guess it's because I've spent my whole life being surrounded by people who only want something from me. They're all after the same thing: money, power, status. They pretend to care, but they don't. They just want to use me for what I can give them. It's hard to find anyone who's real, you know. Tasha nodded slowly. She had seen the same thing in her own world, people who pretended to be friends, but only when it suited them. People who were driven by their own ambitions, using others to get ahead. I get that, she said quietly. I've spent most of my life putting others first, sacrificing my own happiness so they don't have to. I'm a nurse. It's what I do. But I don't know. It feels like I've lost a piece of myself somewhere along the way. Like I've been so focused on taking care of others that I forgot how to take care of me. Grant glanced at her, his expression softening. I know what you mean. It's hard to trust, especially when it feels like everyone's out to use you. But sometimes you need to let someone in. Let them see the real you. Tasha looked at him, her heart pounding in her chest. It was unexpected, hearing him say that. She didn't know why, but in that moment, she felt something stir deep inside her, something she hadn't felt in a long time. The growing chemistry. As the boat glided across the water, the sun dipped lower, casting a fiery red glow over the sea. The world around them seemed to hold its breath, the air thick with the promise of something more. Tasha and Grant sat in silence, but the chemistry between them was undeniable. The space between them felt charged, as if every word, every glance, carried more weight than it should. For the first time since arriving on the island, Tasha didn't feel out of place. She didn't feel like the girl who didn't belong. She felt seen. She felt real. When the boat finally turned back toward the shore, the sky was a darkening canvas of stars. The moment had passed, but the feeling lingered between them, unspoken and fragile. The island was an oasis of wealth and luxury, and Grant had built it. Every palm tree seemed to bend just right in the warm breeze, every glass of wine poured just enough to feel indulgent but not excessive. His private villa, nestled on the edge of a private beach, reflected his success, a sprawling estate with pristine marble floors, soaring ceilings, and every possible amenity one could dream of. But tonight, the villa felt suffocating. Tasha had been on the island for a few days now, and while she had enjoyed the incredible views and the lavish accommodations, something about the place felt empty. The beauty of the surroundings could not mask the tension that seemed to permeate everything. She'd spent hours with Grant walking along the beach, lounging by the pool, but she couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something. He was constantly on his phone, always checking in with someone, his brow furrowing as he made decisions about his businesses. Even when they were alone, his eyes seemed distant, like he was there physically but somewhere else mentally. One afternoon, after a long walk along the beach, they sat on the edge of the pool. Grant was flipping through emails, his fingers scrolling through messages that seemed to pile up by the second. He barely noticed Tasha beside him, her eyes studying him, trying to make sense of the man behind the facade. Grant, she finally said, breaking the silence. Do you ever take a break? He didn't look up. I'm always working, Tasha. You know how it is. I do, she said, her voice quiet but firm. But that's not what I mean. Do you ever really take a break? He paused for a moment, then set his phone down, his face hardening slightly. What's your point? Tasha studied him carefully. You have all this, she gestured to the sprawling estate, the shimmering ocean beyond, but you're still unhappy. Grant stiffened, then let out a sharp laugh, the sound without humor. You think you've got me figured out? You don't know anything about me. I know enough, she said, her tone softer now. I know that you have everything most people could ever want, but you're not happy. I can see it. He looked at her then, really looked at her, his expression flickering between annoyance and something else, something she couldn't quite place. And you think you have it all figured out, don't you? He shot back. You think you know what happiness looks like. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But the truth is, Tasha, it's hard to trust anyone when you've been used your whole life. When people only want you for what you have. Tasha was quiet for a moment, sensing the rawness beneath his words. This wasn't the confident billionaire she had come to know. This was the man behind the curtain, the one who had built an empire, but was now realizing it came at a steep price. I'm not asking you to trust me, she said carefully. But I think you need to realize that not everything in life can be bought. And not everyone is here just for your money. His jaw tightened, but she saw a flicker of something in his eyes, a crack in the armor he had built around himself. That evening, after dinner, Grant seemed different. There was a tension in the air, a shift that neither of them could ignore. Tasha had gone to bed early, tired from the day's activities, but she was woken in the middle of the night by a commotion outside her door. Rushing out, she saw Grant pacing the hall, his hand on his phone, his face tight with stress. His body language screamed frustration, and for the first time, she saw him as vulnerable. Grant, she called softly, stepping toward him. What's wrong? He didn't turn at first, but then he let out a long breath, as if the weight of the world was crashing down on him. He finally looked at her, and for a moment, she saw the exhaustion that lingered behind his polished exterior. I don't know who to trust anymore, Tasha, he said quietly. Everyone's always after something. Money. Influence. There's always an agenda. People don't care about me. They care about what I can do for them. Tasha's heart softened at his words. It was the most real thing he had said to her in days. You can't buy trust, she said gently. You can't buy real connections, Grant. I know it's hard. I know you've been burned, but you can't keep hiding behind your wealth. Sometimes, it's okay to let go of the need to control everything. You can't buy happiness. He stared at her, as if her words were slowly sinking in. The weight of them hung between them, and for the first time, Tasha felt like she was seeing him not as the billionaire, not as the powerful businessman, but as a person who was deeply lonely. Maybe I don't know how to do that, he murmured, his voice raw. Tasha's heart went out to him. She knew what it was like to feel isolated, to feel like you were the only one carrying the weight of the world. But at least she had people she could lean on. Grant didn't seem to have anyone. You don't have to figure it all out tonight, she said softly. You just have to start somewhere. The next morning, an unexpected turn of events put their words into action. They were sitting by the pool when one of the staff members rushed to them, a look of panic on his face. We need help, one of the guests has collapsed. It's a medical emergency. Grant immediately jumped up, ready to call for the best doctors money could buy, but Tasha was already ahead of him. She stood up calmly and walked toward the staff member. I'll handle it, she said, her voice calm and steady. Take me to him. Grant watched, stunned, as Tasha moved with purpose. He had never seen her in a situation like this, had never seen her so composed and confident. She was calm, taking charge without hesitation, directing others with an ease he couldn't help but admire. He followed her to the scene, watching as she worked efficiently, assessing the situation with a quiet authority that left him in awe. She didn't need money or influence to make a difference. She just needed her knowledge and her ability to stay grounded in the moment. After the emergency was handled, Tasha turned to him, wiping her hands on a towel, her face flushed but her expression calm. Grant's admiration for her had deepened in that moment. She wasn't just a traveler, a guest in his world. She was someone with real strength, wisdom, and the ability to handle situations he'd never been trained for. That night, as they sat together watching the stars, Grant felt a shift in his feelings toward Tasha. It was more than just curiosity now. He admired her. He respected her in a way he hadn't expected, and something inside him had begun to change. Tasha, however, was conflicted. She had felt a connection with Grant, but she knew this world was just a fantasy, a bubble that couldn't last forever. As she watched him, she couldn't deny the attraction that had started to grow between them. But the reality of their differences weighed on her heart. The sun dipped low, casting a golden glow over the beach as Tasha and Grant walked side by side, their footprints trailing behind them in the sand. The air was warm, but a light breeze kept it comfortable as they made their way to the water's edge. The sound of the ocean crashing against the shore filled the space between them, and for the first time in weeks, Tasha felt a sense of peace. Grant was still laughing at something she had said, his easy smile and infectious laugh making her feel at ease, as if all her responsibilities, all her pressures, were a distant memory. He had a way of making the world feel smaller, more manageable. In his presence, she was reminded of